Distinguished participants, distinguished delegates, hello again. I suggest please write to us in chat whether the simultaneous interpretation is working. So basically, you can check if the translation is working and tell us about it. Let us be getting started. I would like to welcome you today. This is the final online meeting at which we're going to present some of the recommendations for the development of digital skills for cultural and creative industries. This is the final event of 1.5 years project improving digital competencies and literacies in creative and cultural industries of Central Asia. Today, we're going to have several presentations. The keynote presentation will the results of this piece of research that was started at the middle of the last year and continued up till now. I would like to start with the several welcoming remarks, and now you will listen to the audio recording by Amir Piric, the Cluster Bureau Director in Almaty, please.
Dear experts and partners, ladies and gentlemen, on behalf of UNESCO, I'm happy to welcome you to the final event of the Strengthening Digital Literacy Skills and Competencies and Promoting Gender Equality in Cultural and Creative Sectors in Central Asia project, which was implemented by UNESCO Almaty Cluster Office in 2022-2023. First, I would like to start by expressing my sincere gratitude to the Ministry of Culture, Sports and Tourism of the Republic of Korea, who provided financial support to this project and who supports cultural sector through the operationalization of UNESCO 2003 Convention on the Protection and Promotion of the Diversity of Cultural Expressions since 2008. Our today's meeting is focused on the digital skills and gaps in culture and creative industries of the Central Asian region. Our team will introduce the summary of the research work which took place almost a year ago. Here, I would like to thank those organizations and researchers who participated in this research work, especially to Ms. Erke Jumakmatova, who led the study in Kyrgyzstan, Ms. Shafrat Arabova, who conducted the studies in Tajikistan and Uzbekistan, and Ms. Anastasiya Goncharova and her team were responsible for the study for Kazakhstan and the set of recommendations for digital skills development for the entire region, and who will also be our keynote speakers today. The fact that we are having these meetings online allows us to bring together a wider audience and draw on experts from different countries of the region. That's why I would like to thank two other speakers of today's meeting, Mr. Danyar Amaliev from Kyrgyzstan and Ms. Suat Ismailova from Uzbekistan, who will animate our discussion and dive you to the latest inspiring cases of development of cultural and creative industries in their countries. As per UNESCO report, investing in creativity, cultural and creative industries currently provide nearly 30 million jobs worldwide and employ more people aged between 15 and 29 than any other sector. Culture and creativity contribute significantly to the global economy, 3.1% of the global GDP and 6.2% of all employment. Here in Central Asia, we witness a splash of interest, understanding of importance and meaningful initiatives in our cluster countries to develop further cultural and creative industries. With such initiatives and your support and active engagement, culture and creativity could also take a more valuable place in the Central Asian economy for the benefit of local cultural professionals and youth willing to work in culture and creative industries. Last but not least, I would like to thank you all for your interest for further development and strengthening culture and creative industries in the region. And I hope that we will meet in our projects in the nearest future. I wish you all a productive meeting and thank you very much.
Большое спасибо. И у нас второе вступительное слово.
Thank you very much. We are having the second video address on behalf of the donors of this project. This is Goda Ms. Junken Min. Apologies for mispronouncing her name. She's the Director General on the issues of cultural policy, Ministry of Culture, Sport and Tourism, the Republic of Korea. Please activate the recording.
Mr. Amir Piric, Director of the Almaty Office of UNESCO, researcher Ms Anastasiya Goncharova, Mr. Daniel Emaran, founder of the Ola Group, artist and filmmaker Ms. Seldet Islamailova, and distinguished guests of the sub-regional online presentation. My name is Jonghyang Lee, and I'm Director General for Cultural Policy of the Korean Ministry of Culture, Sports and Tourism. It is a great honor and pleasure to join you here today. First of all, I'd like to congratulate you on the wrap-up meeting of the Korea Fund-in-Trust project in Central Asia, and to express my gratitude to the members of the UNESCO regional offices and governments of various countries, as well as the related stakeholders who have spared no efforts to ensure the successful implementation of the project. The COVID-19 pandemic has accelerated the digital transformation of the cultural sector. Amid the calls for a policy response to the changes we are facing, the Ministers of Culture of the UNESCO member states requested support for the cultural sector to achieve digital transformation at the UNESCO World Conference on Cultural Policies and Sustainable Development. It is important to note that an accurate diagnosis of the current situation is paramount in order to set the proper direction of support. This is because governments have limited human and financial resources, and they need to allocate them in the best way to effectively address issues. In this regard, the national study of the level of development of digital skills in cultural and creative sectors that was conducted in Central Asia is very relevant and timely step. The Korean Ministry of Culture has also steadily collected data, including online businesses related to publishing, games, movies, and music within the scope of its content industry survey, and has identified trends in digital transformation by sector. These efforts culminated this April in the publication of the Master Plan for the Digital Transformation of the Cultural Industries 2023 to 2025. The Master Plan includes strategies for creators, such as fostering creative talents in the convergence of culture and technology, opening up cultural resources to promote creativity, and strengthening copyright protection in response to the development of new technologies. Going further, it also includes strategies for consumers, such as enjoying universal digital culture regardless of region and disability. I hope that the National Study Report and the policy direction of Korea's Master Plan will help Central Asian countries' digital transformation of their cultural industries. As a digital powerhouse, Korea will continue to strive for the solidarity with the international community. In closing, I would like to extend my best wishes for the successful completion of the KFIT project in Central Asia, and to thank everyone for your time and attention. Thank you.
Большое спасибо. И мы дальше по программе переходим к...
Thank you very much. And now, according to the agenda, we are moving to our keynote presentation today. The presentation, Digital Skills and Cultural Creative Industries, review and recommendations, to be presented by Ms. Anastasiya Goncharova, a researcher of the digital creative industries. The person who did the survey together with her team, but she was also in charge of the national study and research in Kazakhstan, and also consolidated the results of this research in for the countries of Central Asia. Anastasia, you've got like 30 to 40 minutes time, so you can launch your PowerPoints. While if our distinguished listeners, if you have any questions, you please write them down in your chat as we move along the presentation, or you can raise your hand and ask your question live. Just in case, I'd like to give you a warning that we are recording this event, and this recording and the speaker's presentations will be made available to you later. If you don't manage to stay all the time. Anastasia, over to you. Major, thank you very much. Hopefully you can see and hear me well. I'd like to welcome you from Almaty. I see that we have people from different countries and most likely from different areas. I think this is very useful since the topic of digital skills, as it appears from the researcher's standpoint, this is the topic without any bottom. The more effort you give to it, the more you immerse in it. And in the context of the countries of Central Asia, in the context of creative economy, basically you come across highly specific and very interesting details, which I'd like to mention today and share them with you. So my task is to give you a broader view on all of these different processes in 4 different countries. So I had to remove multiple details uh, from this presentation because we have multiple pages of research. So I'd like to show you some of the key trends, country specifics, and the topic of digital skills very well highlights how the creative and cultural industries get transformed along with the evolution of digital devices. These are the things that the practitioners in their day-to-day routine, well, basically they cannot even see or feel this. So should our audience has anyone who believes themselves to be creative entrepreneurs, I think this is going to be a very interesting look from the outside on what is happening in there. So for your permission, let me show my screen. Thank you very much. Hopefully you can see the screen now. Yes, we can see your screen. I just would like to ask you to use the full display mode, presentation mode. Okay, just a brief summary. It appears that 4 researchers from the countries of Central Asia, we worked on the national research topic. Sharafat Arabova is here with us. She's the author for the research from Uzbekistan, Tajikistan. Erkia Jumahmatova was the author of the first survey in Kyrgyzstan. Sana Hakim and myself, we were responsible for the materials about Kazakhstan. And basically, we did these surveys at the very different periods of time. The peculiar feature is that everyone approached this from different angles. Okay, so 4 countries, we researched creative industries, which are highly specific: music, movie production, cultural events, organization. And apart from many researchers, we addressed not students, but professionals who already operate in the marketplace, trying to understand how or in what way they use these digital tools, how do they track down the digital transformation in their industries, and what kind of skills do they get along these all processes. So the period covered was 2022, 2023. Moving on, next slide, please. Next one. Well, at the beginning, before we start talking about the actual recommendations, I'd like to voice some of the highly specific difficulties or challenges. You may call them whatever you wish. The topic of digital skills, the topic of creative industries, these are quite complicated topics and they're interpreted differently in different countries.
In spite of the fact that in the scientific literature and in educational literature, as well as any corporate literature, the digital skills have been studied for quite a long period of time. However, the angles through which they are studied are very different. And even in the government reports, the digital skills are interpreted in different ways. And therefore, it was a real challenge for us to try to find a common approach. And this is the reason for which every group of researchers had their own approach. And we see that the transformation of digital skills and tools is taking place and rotating so fast that we are not keeping a pace with it. And since we are talking about creative industries, we have to understand that in music and in cinema making, as well as in organization of various mass culture events, there was a very high penetration of the technologies. And this is the reason for which in the market, very narrow perception of digital skills is dominating. And I believe that the phrase such as, for example, digital equipment is actually causing such a confusion because it is actually narrowing the focus to a very technical perception. And for you to understand better what digital skills are, no matter how many different approaches and studies we are applying, I would like you to focus on one central idea, which is ICT, information communication technologies. And ICT provide us with the access to satellite communication, internet, so that we will be able to gather information and to share it and to communicate this knowledge among ourselves. And various digital devices usually help us in doing so, such as tabs, telephones, PCs, etc. There are some other professional devices, and we see also that various ICT devices have evolved over the period of past 5 years so much. This is the reason for which we see a lot of cloud platforms and various applications, a lot of AI solutions, Internet of Things, etc., etc. Therefore, in this area of new digital technologies, we usually face this new term of digital skills, because people have to get adapted to these changes and be able to actively use all these devices. Next slide, please. The second group of our problem areas of interest are the economic factors, and it is very evident that 4 countries of region, Tajikistan, Kyrgyzstan, Kazakhstan and Uzbekistan, have different levels of economic development. And the first one, which is critically important for the development of digital skills and procedures, is of course penetration and internet speed rate. If there is no internet, there won't be any digital ecosystem, and the level of digitalization is very different in various sectors of economy, and you can even judge it based on the government services provided to the public. Kazakhstan was also very proud of the number of various services, digital services that can be provided to the public as well as to business. The novelty of digital devices that are broadly used means that the number of digital devices available for people is very important, not only for the professionals to be able to exercise some novel new approaches, but since we talk about it as a part of our market economy, it is very important for us to make sure that our consumers, our users are also technically very well equipped, because if we would like to implement any of our creative ideas, it's really relevant for us to realize that they will be consumed by the users in a highly qualitative way. Therefore, they really have to have all the digital devices. It also impacts on the various digital skills and knowledge, because the requirements put forth to the audience is really very high, because they have to know how to use and manipulate various digital devices. Talking about economy, of course, as a rule, we talk about the cities, because in the cities as a rule are associated with advanced technologies, with a huge volume of expertise and solvent audience. And of course, it hampers the evaluation of digital skills, as well as any other skills among the representatives of the creative industries, as compared to small villages, small towns, etc., because the expertise and the digital and technical ecosystem is not as advanced and as developed as in the cities, and therefore there is a kind of segregation. Therefore, it is much easier for us to spread this digital knowledge in the cities. And on the level of digital skills and tools, the integration of the national economy into the global economy influences, as well as the integration of various associations and companies which work in the creative industry, the extent to which they are integrated into the global market, and how much they are supporting their communications with the colleagues from abroad, because it depends on the spread of various standards. And we have also seen this regularity in our 4 countries as well. And I just wanted to show you 2 tables that are proving my assumptions. Number one is the internet bitrate in various countries. And, you know, I took the average global indexes, as well as the indicators for the leading countries. And we see that in Central Asian countries, internet, unfortunately, cannot even be assessed as the average global. In Kazakhstan, everything is more or less okay with mobile internet, whereas in Kyrgyzstan with fixed internet. But however, we're still lagging behind Singapore and Qatar, and there is still a very long way for us to go ahead. And again, I'm getting back to the topic of the cities and the creative cities, and we see that the internet bitrate is much higher than the average country internet bitrate. And this is why in the cities, people are trying to get their dwellings and jobs, because there is much more possibility for them to create new content and to spread this content among the users. The situation is more or less good in Kazakhstan, in Samarkand, in Dushanbe. It is not very good, and nevertheless, we are still lagging very much behind Rayan in Qatar, because we see that the gap is like 5 times in terms of the internet bitrate. Now, how can I page down my presentation? All right, okay. Now, the third set of our difficulties is represented in the status of creative industries, and I would like to apologize for a great number of general conclusions, because they are unavoidable when we are processing such a huge volume of data. But in general, what we see, if we take a look at the creative industries as a market phenomenon as the result of the entrepreneurial activity, the market in various countries is more or less comfortable. But when, for example, we are facing the lack of fundamental regulatory and legislative base and framework, there are negative consequences, such as, for example, as very low quality of statistical data. And you know that we all have been dealing with these issues, and we know very well that there are not any breakthroughs or developments. And unfortunately, there is also a gap between the educational system and the request for people, because you know, we don't know what is the need in the the new employees in the market. We don't know how many graduates have already become the labor market players. And in Kazakhstan, we have already passed various codes of economic activities, which are applied to the creative industries as well. Kyrgyzstan has done this work well before Kazakhstan. They are pioneers in our Kyrgyzstan, and I'm not going to talk about it at great lengths because Daniel Ramadaliyev will be able to make a separate presentation on this topic. And we understand that there is also a kind of prejudice, which is a legacy of the Soviet Union when there was a monopoly for creative industries. This is something that we are still observing in Tajikistan. Partly, we also see it in Uzbekistan, and particularly the mass culture events are too much regulated, over-regulated. And of course, all these aspects are very much influencing on the technical ecosystem and on the extent to which the approaches are rapidly changing, the extent to which mobility is advancing, because, you know, in the government structures, everything is more or less stable, whereas in the market, the various market segments are very immobile, and it is an evidence to the fact that social, legislative, and economic factors are drastically varying our markets. And the fourth group of our difficulties is related to the evaluation of digital skills. And during several years, we had to reiterate that it is incorrect to separate the creative and non-creative specialization, only because the hybrid character of projects is prevailing in the creative industry. And if we had the adequate stat data, we would have seen that about 80% of the specialists who work in creative industry don't have any formal relationship to the creative institutes or universities. And of course, it could be great if gradually we will have to take into consideration this peculiarity of the creative industries, the specialists whom they usually involve, so that in their stat reports, they will also avoid the template, which is actually making this differentiation. And since we've been talking and studying adult specialists and practitioners, it's understandable that throughout their career, they have already accumulated a lot of experience. They have already been educated both in the universities and outside universities. And we see that different types of skills, flexible, rigid, digital, are actually very much intermingled with each other, and inexperienced people will not be able to try to single them out, because all these aspects are supporting each other, and we have to recognize that every specialist is actually a carrier of an individual set of skills. It's a dynamic condition because people are learning continuously, they are traveling, they're requiring new experience, and this is why it is really a huge challenge for us when we are studying digital skills. And very often we are facing difficulties with the definition of digital skills, and therefore the understanding of the level of digital skills which is available at a certain point of time. And it is normal because various categories of different skills are in the focus of policymakers, pedagogues, and educators. And of course, we have to learn how to use various tables and how to use various prompts in GPT chat, for example. And therefore, this gap is also hampering the diagnostics, because people are ready to participate in various surveys and in various studies, but psychologically and conceptually wise, it is very difficult for them to differentiate one aspect from another. And we also see that the digital technologies are very much integrated not only into the professional life, but also in our everyday life. And sometimes it is very difficult to understand where the borderline is, so that you will be able to see very clearly the professional activity of our experts. The fifth segment, as we see, is thanks to the digital transformation, the character of education and skills upgrade has changed greatly thanks to social media and thanks to online educative processes. The process has become very democratic, and the process of acquiring and exchange of knowledge and skills has accelerated. And of course, it is a great challenge for the pedagogues, for the educators, because it is very difficult for them to keep a pace with these phenomena. And another very interesting phenomenon is that the responsibility for education is no longer a responsibility of the employer. Now it is the responsibility of an expert, because if the companies saw that it's their responsibility to provide a career growth for their employees. Nowadays, it's no longer the case. Now, the people have to understand when and how they would like to get educated and how much they're going to invest in it. And it is really the responsibility of the experts. And additionally, very noticeably, the micro education, situational education of in some very small areas has penetrated our daily life. And it is very important for the professionals to understand how much they managed to learn over the period of, let's say, 5 years, when, for example, in internet, we are searching on how to put together the electronic invoice, etc. And unlike the old system, when everybody was putting the diplomas and completion certificates on the walls, this is no longer the case, because the experts no longer reflects on how much skills they managed to acquire and how much they managed to learn. That's why it's really very difficult to evaluate this dynamic growth in the professional environment. And YouTube, which is very interesting in Central Asian countries as well as everywhere else in the world, YouTube is an educational platform #1, which is visited by everybody. And we know that there are a lot of various contents publicly available, and there are some channels to which you can subscribe. And no matter how long we will be discussing with the experts how they are used to increase, to upgrade their digital skills, we do it every day. And the final set of our difficulties is that in creative industries, there are some specifics of the digital skills. And it is related to the fact that such people usually do not belong to only one sector of industry, because they're very actively involved in various projects which are either very much adjacent to each other, or and I would say that this very high level of mobility, I would say that fluidity among various projects, disciplines, industries, and professional skills is kind of DNA of creative industry, which is a huge headache for statistics specialists and the education system. But if we do not recognize this fact, and if we evaluate this level of mobility, it will be very difficult for us to establish a real picture. And it is a situational evaluation, because when new projects pop up, the tasks will change, and there will be challenges of what has to be upgraded, keep changing as well. This is why the situation keeps evolving as well, and our today's measurements will no longer be relevant.
Слайд. Буквально несколько слов про
Next slide, just a few words about the country context, country-specific context, in order to narrow down our topic. Well, basically, yes, next slide, please. Already talked about the point that all of our researchers worked within their own individual framework of the digital competencies frame systems. And basically, gathering all the data together, we came to a conclusion that Tajikistan, Uzbekistan, and Kyrgyzstan, they mostly focused on the technical outlook on skills, which are specifically associated with the use of some equipment, some specialized software applications. It could be about movie making, computer graphics, and so on. For me, as a growth points, I collected some of the areas that can easily be traced in every research. Of course, every country has its own requirements or specific requirements for the particular sets of skills or specific human resources. But the growth points, in my opinion, well, basically, typically the movie industry production is one of the more popular topics. Distribution, including digital distribution, digital marketing with the prioritization of all of the processes related to different audiences. Since we're talking about the market economy, so it's really important to maintain this contact with the audience. Also, the list of technical requirements, sound editing, distribution, and there is an inquiry to expand the worldview and global trends, understanding global trends. Organizing cultural events, these industries quite dynamic in all three countries. The technical expertise is quite strong, lots of various engineering competencies. So any specific domains for the development of digital skills, we haven't identified any of those, but all of the creative industries, sometimes they suffer from the lack of knowledge of copyright, intellectual property, and copyright. They acquire more and more specific popularity and importance. So in the context, again, monetization of the projects, lack of knowledge, or inability to account for copyright may result in the situation that, well, our entrepreneurs, they have no such skills and sometimes underutilize their commercial potential. So this is a big topic with covering these digital gap areas. Next one. Also briefly would like to introduce you into yet one more concept. Working on Kazakhstan's piece of research, we use this particular approach. It's called Digital Skills of the 21st Century, Symbiosis of Technical, Soft, and Hard Skills, or which basically are associated with the ICT processes, information communication technologies. So in this concept, only 1 out of 12 skills actually relates to the technical ones, meaning that the technical skills, well, those are not hard to learn. And we see lots of global and Russian-speaking resources, Russian language resources, where the experts can improve on their skills and learn new stuff. But here, as you can see, I highlighted the main and contextual skills. They sound as flexible skills, but in fact, they are responsible for the content. Well, we can successfully apply cloud platforms or work with ChatGPT, but if our flexible skills are lagging behind, the contents and quality of our professional work will suffer too. So basically, the reason we love this concept with the account of the fact that the knowledge of professional, this is the whole combination of various competences and skills. So this competence responds to this very complicated demand, providing this contents outlook. Hence, in Kazakhstan, we use the concept digital skills of the 21st century and look through these through creation of the chains of creative content creation chains. Basically, let me remind you, this chain consists of 4 key steps. Number 1, administration and management of resources. Non-material, non-tangible resources included, including copyright, intellectual property rights. Number 2, the actual creation of content. Stage 3, this is marketing and promotion. And number 4, distribution and sales. So in our survey, we looked that there are no unique skills required for any digital industry. In fact, the majority of digital tools, they're being fully used in almost all of the 3 studied creative industries, Although at different stages of the development, we've seen some major differences in competencies. This is in the creation of the creative products and contents. So our experts, they basically came to conclusions really hard to systematize any domains for the development of digital skills, because for every person it's its own specific set of skills related to the current or the actual needs. So commenting on any future moves or how it's going to be developing is really hard. For Kazakhstan's growth points, these demands are slightly different. While our experts agreed that it's really important to study all of the digital skills in the 21st century, continuous education, well, lots of possibilities here to improve one's skills, lots of resources where you can do it. Some navigation is required in the digital environment. Legal and ethical competencies are required so that we start dealing with piracy in all forms that flourishes in our industries. Well, illicit music reproduction, the use of broken software, licensed but broken software. So also had some domains working with algorithm creation of prompt, because ChatGPT cannot make quality work until you set the very specific goals and objectives. This is our specialist requires some assistance. Media skills have been mentioned in all of the 4 surveys, because the ability to for self-presentation, managing one's reputation, it's important not just for people who do marketing, but for any artists, creative experts. This is going to be useful for them as well. And like in the other countries, dealing with these groups, consumer groups, is important. And number 4, some of the recommendations on how to develop these digital skills. Recommendation number 1, develop educational products and methodological guides to develop digital skills in national languages. The problem is that right now, the language environment is drastically changing in all 4 countries. Russian is losing its relevance as lingua franca. The younger generation doesn't speak Russian, and to the large extent, this is typical for Tajikistan and Uzbekistan. University graduates no longer ready to study in Russian. English is still an open question. It's better in some instances, it's worse in the others. So basically, the educational content should be available in the local languages. There are some experts present and would like to see these people practice with some knowledge of local peculiarities and what I mentioned before. The whole range of range of resources, technical qualifications, skills could be improved using these resources. It's available both in Russian and English, so the choice is quite wide. But what's missing there is a comprehensive approach to develop all of these digital skills and developing those flexible skills. Flexible skills are important. Since I myself did some research, talking to our experts indicate with the poorly developed communications, including the language, well, it's really hard to integrate into a professional community. Next one. Recommendation number 2, develop the umbrella type online course on digital environment and the principles of interdisciplinary interaction when implementing digital projects. So specifically, we see a huge demand for navigation in the digital environment, which is changing very quickly. I think our experts, it's really important for them not to try to learn the spot fashion, but to gain a more comprehensive understanding of the situation, to where they're headed to, how it can be used in their work, what kind of potential should be available from the application of those skills. So this particular course could be an overview course, umbrella course, include all the key trends, and provide some algorithm for the implementation of digital projects and their more successful monetization, and anything that's related to the work in the digital environment, such as the interaction with the various audiences. The advantage of such an approach could be that on one platform we could unite some of the local experts, plus amongst the students of this course, there could be some people from very different disciplines and different professions. So it could be the platform for development of cross-cultural platforms. Well, it's going to be easier to get some guidance in this digital environment. So in this background, we could organize a training for national trainers to enable them to use these expertise in a particular format to get this across in the native languages and take account of some local peculiarities. Could be added or removed from this course. Next one. Recommendation number 3. Recommendation number 1 we produced for Kazakhstan, and this one also overlaps with what had been voiced in the other country researches. Well, this is the recommendation is to develop the digital producer course for the creative industries. Basically, we can improve competencies of such digital producers by getting 10 out of 12 digital skills of the 21st centuries. Digital skills, despite the fact that they are fresh, they are relevant, they get outdated within 1 to 3 years' time. The system of education, the classical continuous education, when people improve their skills, now this is headed towards the new trend called reskilling, when basically specialists, they gain some extra digital roles or extra professional roles. Kyrgyzstan, Tajikistan, and Kazakhstan producers are called as the key systemically important position. This is the role that is important to launch some serious transformation, launch some new standards. In Kyrgyzstan, for instance, the music industry, such a position as artists. And the concept of reskilling, artists, actors, art managers, designers, musicians, basically gaining these digital production skills, understanding how this digital environment works is going to be very useful. Next one, recommendation number 4 is to develop the program of mentorship, mentor support for the specialists from the local digital ambassadors. You can see huge demand in all 4 markets for some mentorship programs. Mentoring is one of the most important approaches to education when you have a possibility in practices in day-to-day life. You can work with highly qualified people who can guide you, help you address any issues, share their experience, the experience of their trial and error. So it would be nice to launch this project to train digital mentors for recruiting our digital ambassadors, for those who already come highly recommended, for those who already do have some skills on working in the digital environment, who understand a thing or two about marketing or distribution. Should these people appear to be as part of the team and start helping specialists to address even some minor daily routine task, if they did this, it would be really great, because in all of the markets, there is a huge demand for local expertise. People would like to learn more what kind of difficulties local experts face, how did they reach their success, and will they be able to adapt using their approaches. And the last slide. This is recommendation number 5, the concluding one, develop educational programs on the basics of copyright, intellectual property, individually for each market of Central Asia. Well, some sort of a generalized course for the entire Central Asia is impossible because we have some serious differences in the legal frameworks, but there is 100% local experts who can help formulate the format, methodology, set specific standards, and maybe coach those a little bit to be able to provide these trainers a coaching support in the local markets. And despite the fact that the copyright issues that do not directly relate to digital skills, but working in the digital environment is the topic the topic which is important for the commercial success related to the legal competence, ethical competencies. So basically, we burn the candle at both ends if we do this. This ends my recommendations and my overview. Now Majer will now tell us how much time we have for the Q&A. Again, apologies for the technical difficulties at the beginning of this presentation. Hopefully the rest of it you've heard and seen well. Anastasia, thank you very much. Well, in terms of time, we're supposed to have some other presentations, but since we had some technical difficulties, I suggest that we can find a few minutes for a few questions. Should we have any questions? Should our audience have any questions, please put them down in chat, or maybe simply raise your hand and we will enable you to ask your question live. While people are trying to come up with some questions, let me ask you one question. From your particular research and the analysis you performed, the consolidation of data from all 4 countries, how do you see what's your vision and the vision of the experts who have been polled, interviewed? What's the particular role, or what could be a particular role of classical educational institutions such as universities, colleges, so in developing these digital skills? You said that these skills are unique. They specifically relate to multiple professions, multiple jobs, multiple specialties, and you're in demand everywhere. From the standpoint of the classical education or higher education, how to develop these digital skills. Is this possible to create some sort of a digital university in the future? Or we could say that in essence, YouTube is already such a university. We'll need to train people how to use it well, and that's it. Majer, thank you very much. A complicated and interesting question. Well, given the fact that reforming traditional education is highly difficult, complicated process, the educational process and the law and education are the slowest systems globally. Well, the problem is as soon as the universities, as soon as they get more practice, that's when they will be able to practice various settings, sets of skills, various combinations of skills, basically all of the creative and technical qualification and flexible skills. Now we can see that there is very little practice, very little internship possibilities available. But the role of the universities, I guess, has been underestimated because universities can become perfect grounds that could invite over some experienced, highly qualified experts and might also be able to involve their students in various project activities and research. Kazakhstan, Kyrgyzstan, Uzbekistan, Tajikistan. Right now, there are no well-established practices or approaches. To a large extent, the universities, they don't even need to have these expertise within their own doors because it's changing so quickly. But if the universities try to facilitate the work of practitioners, have lots of stories, approaches, and analytical skills, but who have no skills of working with methodologies, should the universities give them such practitioners quality methodology, then you will need to create such as cross-disciplinary teams, teachers plus practitioners, so that
On
using
the
universities,
university
they could
platform,
train
well, so the
practitioners who wish to
practitioners
upgrade their
will be
qualification
able to
and
practice and they
expand
will
their
be able to
knowledge,
expand the area of their
professional environment,
professional
and develop
environment,
some
and they will be
additional
able to master
digital role
new
and
professional
ensure
or
great
digital
involvement of
skills, and at the
students.
same time they will be teaching the students. So this is exactly the way I see the university platform, which will be uniting the pedagogues with practitioners so that the educational resources will be able to be put together there and will be able to be adapted, adjusted, and upgraded there very rapidly. And the more research work, the more practice there will be, the faster the students will be able to master all these competencies. Anastasia, thank you very much for a very extensive answer. And we, as representatives of the organization, which is specializing on the issues of education, science, and culture, it's very important to understand the future prospects of the education sector and be able to find new experts and be able to find new roles and new niches in the changing world. I don't see any other questions. I don't see any raised hands. Therefore, I'm proposing to thank Anastasia one more time for the study that she conducted and for the presentation. And as I have already mentioned, the recording of our today's event will be available in our Telegram site. Well, I see there is one raised hand. It is Bates Asilbekova. Was it just... Oh, no, I simply expressed my feeling of gratitude. Okay, thank you. Thank you. If there are not any other questions, let us move on. And we decided to expand our agenda and to select our experts, regional experts with whom we have already been working before. And the seriousness of the studies of those experts is very well known, and we would like to share them to share their experience of the development of creative industry. And I would like to give the floor now to Daniara Manaliyev, who is the representative of the Association of Creative Industries and the co-founder of Vololo Association. And he is going to talk about the development of creative industry park in his country as a very interesting experience of how those creative industries can play a greater role in the economy of our countries and our region. Please, Daniela, the floor is yours. Thank you. Good afternoon, dear colleagues. It's really very nice to see so many people who think in the same timelines as I do. You know, the Prime Minister has visited our creative park, and the Prime Minister announced that he has already signed a decree, and one of two decrees that we need to commission this park finally is the decree on the establishment of the Creative Industries Park. I would like you to show my presentation on the screen, and I will try to explain what exactly we are trying to establish and the stage at which we are now and why it is important. And I would also like to mention that we are launching the special tax regime. It is called Creative Industries Park, but the park does not anticipate any physical space. It is a virtual space, just like Astana Hub, which is providing special tax regime to all the countries registered in its area, and creative entrepreneurs who represent more than 100 types of various activities will be able to work in any part of Kyrgyzstan and to enjoy tax preferences. For example, there are some other countries which are exercising exactly the same approach. For example, in England, there is development of computer games or theaters and cinemas who enjoy such tax preferences. In UK, it represents about 25% of the total income tax, which is pretty substantial. However, it does not necessarily mean that the taxes are super low. In Kyrgyzstan, we managed to get a very low tax rate. I'm gonna say a few words about myself. We have already established Ololo Creative Impact Fund. It's about 490 square meters where people can actually lease, or creators can lease the office spaces and accommodation, IT companies, startups who are servicing creative industries. And at the same time, I'm the co-founder of the Creative Industries Association of Kyrgyzstan, and I'm the initiator of this Creative Industry Park initiative. And jointly with our colleagues, we are promoting all these ideas. And in addition, in terms of creative economy, I am also a member of the International Council, which is called Global Council of Creative Economy, which is a British organization which is uniting 15 academicians as well as specialists of creative industries from all over the world. And we have people from Brazil, Switzerland, USA, Czech Republic, UK, India, Kenya. In other words, we are covering a lot of countries, and therefore I'm keeping in permanent contact with my colleagues who are in the focus of creative economy studies in different countries of the world. And this is why when I'm stating that we are trying to establish something absolutely new in the world, this is an absolute truth, because I can verify and cross-check it with my colleagues. As I have already explained to my government and to the citizens of my country why it is very important, I'm trying to show to everybody a huge differentiation between the global south and global north. And of course, Kyrgyzstan is a country that refers to the global south, which is lagging behind economically wise from the global north. And this inequality is also expressed in the fact that 85 richest families in the world possess a bigger wealth than 50% of the population of the world. And Kyrgyzstan, of course, is a part of the countries which are in the bottom of the graph. And 10% of the richest people of the world possess 76% of the global wealth. This situation is very unfair. And even if we believe that the world is really working very hard on the inequality problem, however, the data showing that starting from the 50s of the last century, this percentage or this inequality ratio, which is showing the distribution of the wealth, the Gini ratio keeps growing. Therefore, inequality, the gap is growing and becoming wider. And if you take OECD countries, 35 the most developed countries of the world, the trajectory of their development starting the 60s of last century compared to 77 top countries of the world, you see that this gap keeps growing as well. And we have to find a way not to try to keep a pace, but to do something, making sure that we will reach faster the destination where the world is now heading for. And we have to find some creative solutions for this. And ChatGPT has already shown that there are some chances, because some people who were running at the back probably can use something very creative and make a breakthrough, and will start understanding the concepts much faster, and will produce some new products much faster as well. This is a Clark-Fisher model, which is demonstrating how the labor resources are distributed in the UK. The green line is showing agri-farming business. And as you see, in a pre-industrial area, the majority of the population were involved into agri-farming business, and now this percentage is very small. The blue one is manifesting the distribution of the industrial workers, and at some point of time, they outpace the number of the employees in the agri-farming sector. But the tertiary services sector is very rapidly growing, and the majority of the population in any developed country is involved in services sector. This is the reason for which any country of the world is typically having the largest number of productive population working in services, and a very small percentage of the people are working either in mining industry or in agri-farming business. But there is also a quaternary sector, and everybody is trying to understand what it is. It is rapidly growing. We call it creative industry. In Scandinavia, they call it economy of impressions. In Italy and Spain, they call it the cultural economy. In the USA, they usually call it the economy of knowledge, but it's understandable to everybody that the productivity rate is very different, because people who work in startups can have more investments than large plants and factories. For example, I was showing our hub to the Prime Minister, and I was introducing different people. For example, when the company is only $30 million worth, and there are only 3 persons who are working in this company, and there are some Kyrgyz plants, $100,000, and it is very difficult for them to attract investors, whereas the guys in startups generate various creative ideas, and they invest a lot of investors. And the Prime Minister said that 57% of the population in our country are under 30. We have very strong horizontal links. For example, during the pandemic, we had a lot of volunteers, and people were risking their lives to help those people whom they never saw before. For example, last year when Tajikistan tried to invade Kyrgyzstan, the volunteering movement was really very strong, and we managed to to raise more than 20 million tenge, and people were bringing a lot of foodstuffs, a lot of consumer goods, and there were also volunteers who were protecting the city of Bishkek from the burglars. And these horizontal links are really very good for spread of innovations, because people are sharing their ideas very easily. We are nomads, just like in Kazakhstan, and we are sharing with each other very simply. We can exchange our pastures, we can lift up our houses and move elsewhere. This mobility and creativity is very important for our economy. And in addition, our market is very small, and people who set up their own business from day one start thinking of how to make their business global. I understand that in Russia and Kazakhstan, the domestic market is pretty big, and many people are focusing on the needs of the domestic market, which is not the case in Kyrgyzstan, because in our country, everybody is trying to sell their products abroad. They master English. They understand that the risk of failure is very high, but nevertheless, if something happens, it is really very good. And when I'm communicating with my colleagues from the UK, I understand that very often technological progress, especially in the public at large, is slowing down, because there are some traditions, there are some very well working institutions, factories, plants, buildings, etc. And it is very difficult to change it, because it is too painful. And that's why, for example, the dentistries in our countries can be of better quality as compared to the most developed countries in the world, simply because we started later. And sometimes, in Kyrgyzstan, there isn't a single plant or enterprise who's been working for 100 years in a very efficient way, and we are proud of it. And of course, God forbid us from any disruption in this industry. There is nothing to lose for us, and we can set up something cool and new from day one. And all these are very nice preconditions. And we are explaining to the government that everything depends on the creative industries. Indeed, these companies are very important, but very often we hear that, yes, of course, we are going to develop the creative industries. Some 20, 50 or 100 people will become very rich, but we have to feed the whole country, and agriculture is feeding a lot of people. And then in October, I was participating in the Global Creative Industry Forum in Bali, and Joko Widodo, who is the president of Indonesia, and you know that Indonesia has initiated the Year of Creative Economy. And Indonesia, in principle, is one of the exemplary countries which is supporting the development of creative economy. And Joko Widodo, the president of Indonesia, said that the aim is not to simply develop creative industry industry, but the whole country, the whole economy of the country should be creative. And it is possible to achieve if you have a lot of creative specialists. Therefore, our chain is as follows. If we set up very nice conditions for the development of creative industries, then a lot of creative specialists will be popping up in the market, and they will start operating in traditional economy. They will help us, for example, to design a nice packaging for flour, or they will be providing very nice solutions at the internet marketplaces, and all the products of Kyrgyzstan will have a very high share of creative component, and therefore creative industry means the impact on the whole economy, including myself. 3 and even 2 years ago, jointly with a group of specialists on creative economy, including 3 or 4 specialists from Kazakhstan, we put together the creative economy development roadmap, and we were doing it in the framework of Creative Central Asia Network, which does not exist as an organization, but it exists as the network. And we try to understand, you can actually copy this QR code and you can download this roadmap. This is a document of 40 pages, which is describing what every Central Asian country could do to continue a creative economy in different countries. And we understood that the first 2 steps is to try to get a message across to the people who are working in the creative industry that they really work in creative industry, because the majority of them are unaware of it, and they are just like a fish in the water who doesn't know that what water means. They have to understand that they are a part of the creative economy. They have to start interaction with each other. And during the second step, we will actually try to establish cooperance. When you are cooperating with each other, you are collaborating, you are buying from each other, you are forming associations, and you are bringing your proposals to the government. And it is a very important step, and we understood that for every Central Asian country, it is very important to have a very strong association of creative industries. In Kazakhstan, in Kyrgyzstan, it is called the Creative Industry Association of Kyrgyzstan. And we were enumerating what would be of success for development of creative economy. By the end of the day, we would like the, Central Asian countries to start exporting creative products globally. In Kyrgyzstan, there is a very nice precedent, High Technologies Park. It was established in 2011, much before Astana Hub or IT Park in Uzbekistan. And we who actually were establishing this high technology park, we were replicating the experience of Belarus, and we were thinking, why don't we do it for all creative industries, not only for IT creative industry, because we understand that in terms of creative industry development, the taxation is playing a very important role, and particularly income tax as well as social deductions, which represent a huge burden on the wage fund, which represent 80% of all the expenses in creative industry. And this is why we proposed the government to establish a specialized tax regime for creative industry park, and a lot of things have already been achieved. By 99%, I would say that our pie is almost cooked, almost baked, and we're just waiting for a couple of last final steps. And one of the steps has already been implemented. As I mentioned at the beginning of my presentation, we had a meeting with the Prime Minister today. And if, in Creative Industries Park, we are embracing 100 areas of activity. It's ex-territorial. It is not linked to any location, to any territory, and actually in every region of Kyrgyzstan, you can work as a member of the Creative Industry Park member. And just like in Astana Hub, we have a condition that 80% of the revenues of the company should be from export. And this is why many companies cannot get registered here. Same tax or unified tax is replacing the sales tax and VAT, and for everywhere it is the same, and it is zero. Whereas in the Creative Industry Park, we also anticipate, and we managed to find a scheme in the government when there will be a phased out increase.
потом будет 1% 2 года, и с 27 года начиная будет 2%.
Then this will be 1%, and then 2% is single tax. Also, like in the high technologies park, resident companies will pay 1% membership fees. This is to maintain the management of the park. Income tax will be less, 5% instead of 10, and the social tax is 27%. 27% of all wages in the creative industries park. As a high technologies park, it's going to be a fixed amount, about 14,000 tenge per person. Since such park will emerge, we'll be able to measure the development of creative industry. We'll be able to see the real numbers of the companies, because many companies in creative industries, they operate clandestine fashion. You do mapping, you get some data, but realistically, there are much more companies and many more companies. Many companies hide their revenues because in the creative industry, this is an intangible asset, does not require any customs clearance, doesn't cross borders. It's not tangible. You cannot go to a warehouse and find it. In the creative industry, there are lots of creative accounting or creative tax evasion. Everyone understands the companies need to come out of shade and start paying taxes to be able to work with the normal investors and banks. Since the tax rates are going to be different, many companies are planning to come out of shadow and operate in a regular fashion. This will enable us to accumulate some resources to develop creative economy because of this 1% tax, and hopefully we'll be able to keep the best brains in the country, brains that create innovations. The law, what has happened so far? The Creative Industry Park law was adopted. The presidential decree was passed on the support of this park. Last year, they introduced amendments to the tax regulations, which fixed the tax rates I talked about. Now that today they have passed the resolution on the establishment of such a park, the only thing to do, there is a resolution about the listing of activities. And I think it's almost ready. This is just to be signed by the Prime Minister. So it's going to be signed within the next few weeks. And then we'll start creating this park. We'll start registering some residents, hopefully by sometime in the fall. The mechanism will start working. These are the industries listed in the law. Types of activities, they are inside each industry, unlike the British approach, where they list 13 various industries, which are creative. The creative industry park, we added this list some service industries. Service industry who train specialists for those areas, because if you develop IT, but you don't develop any IT schools, there will always be some lack of human resources. This is what is happening now, lack of human resources. Music, this is really important, but musical schools are vital too, because without them, there will be no good musicians. And we also need to create some good conditions for them. So it turns out there are some creative industries and the companies who service or cater to these industries. I know in Kazakhstan, they moved along the discussion what industries must be classified as creative economy. It took some time. 43 such types were recently approved. In Kyrgyzstan, the authorities changed, ministers changed. So this particular process, lengthy process, it's going to be, it would be undoable to, wouldn't be possible to put everyone some discussion table to decide what industries are actually part of the creative industry. So we called upon the government to talk about the tax incentives first, and then discuss the process took up the pace. This is it, colleagues. If you have any questions, I'll be happy to share with you more knowledge. Daniel, thank you very much. Always great pleasure to listen to you, since we talk about digital skills and digital technologies. I can also say that Daniel has got a Telegram channel, the YouTube channel, where he's having some very interesting discussions. So if you didn't know, well, now you would know, and basically to get more from Daniar. I suggest that we pose questions till the time of the second presentation. Now I'd like to give the floor to Ms. Saadat Ismailova. She is an independent artist, movie director, and the Davra Researcher Group founder. This is how to use the creative industry in the region. She will introduce her own vision. Saadat, over to you. Thank you, Manjer. Thanks to all of the speakers. It's been very interesting, lots of new information. Today I'm going to be speaking about Dombra. Well, this is a highly practical example of a musical instrument, how we research Dobra. This is a research group platform where we unite young artists, female artists from Uzbekistan, Kyrgyzstan, Tajikistan, and Kazakhstan. Female artists only. It's a bit more difficult with Turkmenistan. So far, we represent these 4 countries. I've got some documents I'd like to share with you. Just a second. Can you see it? Yes, that we can see that. Davra means a circle in Uzbek, some sort of a circle structure or a cycle, the cycle that repeats itself without an end, a never-ending cycle. So I created this group, and for me, since I used to work in the region in all of these 4 countries quite some time in the field conditions, I'm really looking forward towards some field research. I did some public good project, and the projects must be regional in nature. If they are not regional, I start losing my grip. It seems like this is the voice coming from a single point. However, it's really important to look at the region as something integral, something whole, something closely interacting. Even despite the fact there are some differences in the political landscape and the most recent history, if you take a look at the most recent 30 years, different systems of education, there are some possibilities for the close interaction. Also, I'd like to know that Davra is a result of the post-COVID situation. If if I wasn't forced to work remotely, if I wasn't forced to use digital tools, I wouldn't ever be able to create such an association. We operate online, we're not based anywhere. We do not have any gravity points. We are all in the digital space. Of course, we meet live on the regular basis to check on our processes, whether they really go beyond Davra. Davra, for me, there was a reason. Last year, I was invited to Document 15, the large international event, international exhibition that happens every year in Germany, in the town of Kassel. The curators were this team of artists from Indonesia. Their vision of this exhibition, they noted the point of collective nature and sharing one's experience. I was invited as an individual artist, not as a team, but I thought it would be a missed opportunity. I thought I would have to share my experience. So basically, we did this exhibition in the museum. I invited Davra. At that point of time, Davra consisted of 20 members. Mostly these were young ladies. We had one young guy from Uzbekistan. This happened quite organically since we worked on a particular topic, and young ladies mostly volunteered around 30 years old. I had 6 rooms. Out of these 6 rooms, 2 were allocated for Davra. Exhibition lasted for 100 days. and Davra participated for 40 of those days. In these two rooms, they happened to be in transformation, constant transformation, because every day one of the members would be able to get space to herself. This is a program of our 41 days of exhibition in the town of Kassel. Well, we had performances, movies, sound installations, some really small interactive sessions with textiles and fabric, since the participants they could do some new piece of work with this particular space. I didn't have any task of specifically dealing with the new technologies, but the task was these pieces must be procedural. Well, they weren't supposed to be fixed in time. They weren't supposed to be static. There should be something flowing in time, music, movies, reading. So all of this, it was also important for me to give the academic side of it. We invited some of the scholars who read, well, in the Davra space, they delivered various lectures on various items that seemed to be connecting to the topic we are disclosing. So as you can see, that was still the COVID time. These are some of our participants. This is Davra day one. All of these young ladies came to Kassel, but we had to do this rotation because it was really expensive to have everyone in the town at the same time. On the picture, it seems like this is some classical performance related to some hair braiding. Well, but this is a sound installation behind it. Speaking about digital skills, I'd say the issue of sound or the use of sound in the creative environment in Central Asia, I see this to some limited extent. This is something but that must be developed, something we must pay attention to, because work with the sound provides unlimited possibilities, can be used in a more traditional museum settings, or it can be, well, there are no limits on how to work with the sound. And of course, some technical skills, digital skills, I'd see this more as a parallel development, because if we focus on digital skills, or basically the information how to use it, I see this mostly as a tool. And I believe that for artists, modern artists, painters, it's really important to develop these in parallel, because digital skills, they do have an impact on how you think, and this may have an impact on the process in your selection of topics, on how to communicate ideas you'd like to share. It also seems to be like a piece of textile. This, again, this lady did this, just Gulmadazimo, she's from Bishkek. She did this piece of work with the sound. These are these blankets, but you could lay down and hear the sounds. She recorded in a sewing shop in Bishkek. I think this is typical women's work, is sewing. So she recorded one day of work in such a sweatshop where women talk, where women sing, share, share their problems, crack jokes. Well, I think this was this particular atmosphere. So if you close your eyes, you could immediately get into this sewing shop, into this little factory. And if you open your eyes, you get back to this room in German. Well, it was hard for her because she never did anything with the sound. Hopefully, she will be developing this in the future, because that's where I see huge potential for the creative work. Here we had two musical projects. Takjan Karataeva from Kazakhstan. She's a musician. She was also learning to become a music composer, and she thinks how to work with the electronic music, but also using traditions that exist in Kazakhstan for hundreds of years, for millennia. Diana Mukhina did a DJ set, and it's with the video in the background. So these digital skills were vital. So we had 20 young ladies there, and we had some limited capabilities, but they did this very interesting program that will change and roll from day to day. We had some technical stuff. This is Daria Nurtaza. She worked with felt. She created this shape that would constantly rotate. She programmed it, that would rotate, and there will be, she recorded the sound. One woman put their babies to bed, and they sing a song. This is not exactly a lullaby. These are just some of the sound that give their babies some comfort, to get them into calm state, to let them fall asleep. She's a great musician from Kazakhstan. Hopefully she'll be doing some more work related to sound and space, working with textiles. She's using an electrical motor, so the sculpture, it was moving all the time, rotating in space. Here, this is also, well, some very interesting piece of work. This lady is also from Kazakhstan, Medina. As you approach this, this is the other side. Oh, well, she made this, these, well, eligible women who gonna be married. Basically, this is the interview of young ladies who are about to be married, or those who are married already. Basically, in the role in society is to service the whole family. This is the reality they can't quit. So these are different stories of these young ladies. So she used this particular sensory programming. You could touch some of these nails, the stories would change. And at the same time, and that also there would be translation of these stories into English. So some very interesting piece of work. Again, the use of textile, the use of sound, the voice recordings, and some sort of programming. This was the other piece, the no special digital skills here. And probably there is a question on, well, how long does the DAVRA exist? Well, we did this interesting publication, published these books in Italy, where our members reacted to the idea of Chitano, 40 spirits that exist in the spiritual text in the Fergana Valley. So they did these drawings, texts, pictures. We made this book, published this book, and throughout the exhibition that was selling there. So basically, this is some documentary trace of Davra's existence. This is it about the digital skills, but I also would like to say how Davra is developing further, because it's quite interesting on its own as a project that exists in a purely in a digital space. And so we're at the exhibition, document 15, we thought, would we continue? Well, Davra continues its existence. We trying to define this particular organism, and I see this as an open platform, the platform that is quite fluid, is not limited by the gender definition.
In other words, it does not depend on the gender definition, and it is putting together, constructing a bridge internal bridge, because I believe that the distance between the countries, I would say mental distance between the countries of our region, turned out to be very large. I was not working in this reality and I don't feel these barriers, therefore, or limitations. Therefore, I think it is very important to maintain this dialogue and to continue our creative activity. For me, it is such a significant task of Davra. And on the other hand, I see that there is an international interest in the projects that Davra is developing now, and that we are going to present at Difference Biennale. Such is the story of Davra, and talking about various specializations which exist inside of Davra. I was talking about sounds for quite a time, and there are a lot of ladies who work in cinema making industry, and when I was studying cinema making, it was sponsored by the government structures, and the ideological stresses were really very strong. And now with the development of technologies, everything is becoming more available and accessible. Therefore, I believe that these digital skills and technologies give us a possibility to hear different reactions to various happenings in reality, and different opinions be heard. So this is the most interesting aspect of digital skills. And what is happening inside of Davra, those girls who've been taught how to put together websites, create websites, they're working in this area, and it's a kind of reality that all of us are facing today. And we are requiring more skills, and it is much easier for us to work and to continue developing. And getting back to Davra, Davra is also now in charge of software engineering for various cinema viewing in the School of Modern Cinema Industry in France, in Go East Festival in Germany, and in Georges Pompidou Museum. Therefore, there are a lot of happenings in the area of art, and we'll see what's going to happen next. But Davra remains to be an online platform. We usually communicate via Zoom. We have some small plans this summer in Almaty. We are going to launch a public program, and we'll move forward and see how it's going to develop in the future. Thank you. Saudat, thank you very much. It was a very interesting presentation, and since the project is also focusing on gender equality promotion, and in our region, everything that is related with digital professions and skills is not associated with women. Therefore, it is very important for us to show your project and how it is promoting gender equality among various cultural and creative professionals of our region. Thank you very much. And as of the result of these two presentations, which animated a little bit our event, our meeting, I would like to ask if there are any comments or questions among our audience. Please raise your hand if so. And meanwhile, I just wanted to ask if Daniela is still with us. In the process of creative industry park development, maybe you have already heard or received the information as to the extent to which in your country you are discussing the ratification of 2005 convention, UNESCO Convention on the Freedom of Creative Self-Expression. This convention has already been ratified by Uzbekistan and Tajikistan, but it is not yet ratified by Kyrgyzstan and Kazakhstan. Therefore, we are still waiting that the development of Creative Industry Park will boost up the ratification of the convention and will make this convention more interesting for your countries. Yes, thank you very much. We keep in touch with our colleagues in Kyrgyzstan, and we are trying to promote this issue. You know, we started moving this issue, and then there was a lot of rotation in the Ministry of Culture when the ministers were replacing each other. I'm pretty sure that it has to be ratified because I think that it will be very profitable for Kyrgyzstan. It does not require any additional resources, and it is very important to explain it to everybody, because at the very beginning there was a concern expressed that we will have to pay some membership fee for this, but when all these little issues were clarified, the situation has simplified. Indeed, there are a lot of reforms ongoing, reforms now in our government, because they're passing a lot of new laws and sub-laws, and I'm pretty sure that it'll take place very soon. Daniel, anyway, I would like to thank you again for your reply, because we see that the issue is still topical and it is of interest for Kyrgyzstan. I ask this question because we still have the final word, which will be made by UNESCO headquarters, by the expert on the diversity of the creative self-expression. But I see that Aygul Khalafova would like to ask a question, or would you like to get straight to the final words? No, I have a question, Majed, and my question is to Sadat. Sadat, thank you very much. First of all, I think that it was a very interesting project, and there are two questions related to your project. So there were 20 girls who were participating in it. Is there any interest still displayed to this project? Are there many new members, new ladies who are joining your project? And where do you get the support of your project? Because this project is unconventional for our region. It is not habitual for us, but nevertheless, it is really very interesting to combine the sounds and the crafts and to combine such issues as, for example, the routine daily practices. And it was a very interesting picture with the nails that you demonstrated in your presentation. Who is supporting you? Is there any understanding expressed by the government, by the partners and business and NGOs? No, you know, the government does not provide any support to us. And everything is based on our enthusiasm and the energy that we have, the desire that we have to interact with each other and continue working. And I believe that it is really very important, because indeed there are some expenses that we have to undertake, and usually we cover them thanks to small programs which Davra is usually launching, for example, Right Text, or the situation of the modern arts in our region and what is happening, for example, in terms of the modern arts in Uzbekistan and Kyrgyzstan. And thanks to those little projects, they manage to collect fees, and we usually have some savings and that we usually spend on our expenses, mandatory expenses. Everything is based on trust and confidence. The relationship is absolutely horizontal and transparent, and we usually take the decisions together, collectively. So this is the way it works. But of course, there is one peculiarity, because probably the experience of work in the Western countries over the past 20 years, which probably pushed me to the moment when I started understanding that probably we also have to surpass our limits and to get the new generation representatives involved into this work. And their participation in Davra was supported by Goethe Institute. We were also producing one small project in Central Asia with the support of Goethe Institute. After that, we did not actually ask for anybody else's support, because we need to first think of what we have already been doing and what we need to do in the future, because I really don't want to have a kind of, continuous movement and launch one project after another. I think that rather our projects have to be targeted. Now we are going to have a publication, and we are intending to create a website, and I would like my participants to work in the field, because I believe that in our creative industry we are mainly operating in the urban environment, and very often we do not understand what exactly is taking place. We really need to go out in the field and face the reality and pick up our inspiration from there, and to do something that is really significant. Therefore, talking about sustainability, this sustainability is first and foremost related to our to sustainability of our wish to do something. I believe that such sustainability is very important as of today. Maybe it sounds very romantic, but I hope that there will be maybe another side of it, and it will pop up when necessary. Thank you. Sadat, thank you very much. And since there are no other questions, now I'm proposing to move gradually to the final words, and I would like to turn the floor to Caroline Meunier, to my colleague, who's going to be talking about the 2005 Convention about the diversity of creative self-expression forms, and then we will wind up our event today. Caroline, please.
Thank you very much, Madger. Do you see my screen?
Yes, I can see it, but please, can you share it on the full screen?
Yeah, I'm trying to. Yes, is it in full mode?
Yes.
Okay, very good. Well, first of all, many thanks for the invitation, and many thanks to all the participants being with us from the 4 countries of this project. I'm Caroline Meunier. I'm the program specialist in UNESCO headquarters in the 2005 convention, and I'm in charge in the monitoring of all the operational projects we carry out worldwide, together with our field colleagues, such as the Almaty office and Aygul and Major in this case. My closing presentation, aims more specifically in providing you with the overall context and overview of the work on digital environment carried out by UNESCO at a more global level in the framework of the 2005 convention, and where we stand today. Just as a little recording, since the adoption of the convention in 2005, we've seen that digital technologies have revolutionized the way cultural goods and services are created, produced, distributed, and consumed, notably with the birth of a new generation of connected multimedia devices such as smartphones, tablets, and e-readers. And new business models have emerged for the distribution of cultural content. And this new internet business model raise challenges for tax and regulatory systems. In addition, we've seen that in many regions still lack the necessary infrastructure, including lack of devices, poor or non-existent connectivity. And artists do not always have the requisite technical knowledge. Cultural industries are sometimes slow to explore the potential of new business models. And there is a lack of data to determine whether digital technologies and platforms have actually made access to culture easier, faster, and more affordable to all. And this is in this context that state parties to the convention through the governing bodies of the 2005 convention, have been reflecting on the key challenges posed by digital technology for the implementation of the convention. These reflections started 10 years ago already, and in 2017, the Conference of Parties of the Convention adopted the Digital Operational Guidelines, followed in 2019 of these operational guidelines to promote the diversity of cultural expressions in the digital environment by the parties. Monitoring the implementation of the convention in the digital environment at national level is a dynamic process supported by tools such as the quadriennial periodic reports and the policy monitoring platform, which lists measures taken by parties in the digital environment, as well as the global reports on creativity that we referred to during this meeting. So I invite you to refer to these tools, which on the one hand analyze the impact of the transformations brought about by digital technologies and the internet on the diversity of cultural expressions. And on the other hand, they include several examples of policies and measures aimed at protecting and promoting cultural and creative industries in the digital environment. To date, we have listed more than 350 measures concerning the digital environment worldwide. Allow me to briefly outline the different themes at the heart of the regulatory changes made by the parties that we have been able to identify, mainly through the periodic reports that we managed to gather. And I'm here, what I will now present is like based on about 100 periodic reports presented by member states. Firstly, there is the digital transformation of cultural institutions and the digitization of cultural heritage. And I think the first presenter talked about it. 80% of state parties to the convention reported having adopted such measures. Parties also have taken measures relating to training and capacity building, as well as networking and other avenues, enabling cultural and creative agents to connect with and benefit from digital skills and resources. 71% of the nearly 100 parties reported having adopted measures in this area. On the other hand, only a few parties appear to be using policies and measures to actively address the issue of remuneration for artists and creators in the rapidly changing digital environment. Parties also have promoted the diversity of digital cultural content through taxation, for example, by imposing tax obligations on digital platforms in order to finance national funds in some cultural sectors for the creation, distribution, or production of cultural content. With regard to discoverability of online content, although some parties have declared that they have taken initiatives, it is notable that digital cultural uses are evolving more rapidly than the adaptation of policies to protect and promote the diversity of cultural expressions in the digital environment. And finally, as far as data and recommendation algorithms are concerned, despite the importance of digital access for cultural expressions, only 35% of parties to the convention reported having statistics and studies based on recent data and on access to digital media. Sorry, I missed one slide, but wanted to talk a bit about the main issues at stake. Because in the digital area, we need to pay particular attention to the discoverability of cultural content. The vastness of the internet and algorithm biases often make it difficult for cultural expressions to reach audiences. As we strive to create a more inclusive and interconnected world, we need to ensure that new technologies are not brakes, but levers to promote diversity. There is also an urgent need for ethical principles to govern the development and use of generative artificial intelligence, which can now produce images, sounds, and text, and which raises new questions about copyrights. We need to ensure that these technologies are deployed in a respectful, responsible, and transparent way, and with full respect for the intellectual property rights of creators. Collaboration between artists, technologists, civil society, and the relevant public authorities will be crucial to striking this delicate balance and ensuring that generative AI is a tool for empowerment and not for exploitation. In 2021, UNESCO's member states adopted the recommendation on the ethics of artificial intelligence, which has become the world's first standard-setting instrument on that subject. Now, what can be done concretely to support state parties in this field? From UNESCO, we strongly encourage state parties to develop national roadmaps on digital environment for the diversity of cultural expressions. But that said, since the adoption of the Open Roadmap in 2019, only 4 parties have shared a national roadmap with the Secretariat, namely Canada, including Canada, Quebec, France, Germany, and the Republic of Korea. The monitoring of national roadmaps has thus produced very mixed results, indicating that most parties are still encountering serious challenges in this process, which is accentuated by a lack of expertise in digital regulation, the weakness of dedicated institutions, and the limited capacity of parties to monitor and evaluate the impact of their digital policies. This is why recently we have put in place 2 main assistance programs to support parties in the digital transition. This is notably the case for the Digital Creative Laboratory, which is implemented since 2021 with the support of the Republic of Korea. And the project which gathers us together today is part of this main program. This program helps strengthen the digital skills of the cultural and creative sector in 12 Asian countries. Another program I wanted to highlight is the Technical Assistance Program for the implementation of the Convention in the Digital Environment, which is funded by France and soon by Quebec, by Canada, and which aims to support parties in verifying and developing regulatory frameworks that take into consideration the digital environment. Now we are developing a pilot phase since last year in Georgia, Uganda, and Zimbabwe. But this particular project is aimed to help countries to develop their national roadmap on the basis of the Open Roadmap. And I would like to make here a parenthesis and to explain a bit more about the Open Roadmap, because it might be a good way forward also for Central Asian countries now that we have the diagnosis, the surveys. The Open Roadmap offers a range of possibilities that parties can choose from according to their priorities. And it is an open-ended roadmap so that it can be adapted periodically to the rapid evolution of digital technologies. It defines 5 common results that national roadmaps should generate, and it proposes 20 reference activities by way of example. To develop a national roadmap within this framework, it is necessary to have a sound knowledge of the convention and of the functioning of national and cultural and creative industries, to be able to select the main lines and priorities areas of action at country level, and to be able to develop in collaboration with various stakeholders. It means to involve specialists, experts, but also civil society, professionals, academics, and the artistic world. So talking about the way forward, just to recall that in September last year, 2022, culture was declared a global public good by the 150 countries that took part in the World Conference on Cultural Policies and Sustainable Development, Mondiacult 2022 in Mexico. On this occasion, in the final declaration, the states also expressed their concerns about the challenges posed by digital transformation on societies and the culture sector, and in particular, I quote, the impoverishment of cultural and linguistic diversity online linked to artificial intelligence systems and insufficient regulation of algorithms. It is against this backdrop that the Conference of Parties of the Convention decided 3 weeks ago at its 9th session in Paris, here in headquarters, to set up a reflection group on the diversity of cultural expressions in the digital environment, whose mandate will be to make recommendations to the committee in February 2025 on the promotion of linguistic diversity of cultural content, the discoverability of national and local cultural content on digital platforms, the importance of greater and meaningful transparency on digital platforms regarding cultural issues, notably artistic freedom and the impact of artificial intelligence on cultural and creative industries. As regards education specifically, since we were also talking about this topic, in particular in this workshop, in 2021, UNESCO member states requested a revision process to develop a UNESCO framework for culture and arts education. The framework builds on UNESCO's work in the fields of culture and arts education, including the roadmap for arts education adopted in Lisbon in 2006, and the Seoul Agenda, Goals for Development of Arts Education, adopted in 2010, more than 10 years ago, and the respective outcome documents of 2 World Conferences on Art Education. To revise all this framework in the light of the new change in the world and including the digital changing, a World Conference on Culture and Arts Education will be held early 2024 in the United Arab Emirates. And the revision process is a key opportunity to bolster the global consensus around the nexus between culture and education, including digital skills. UNESCO, through its various programs and initiatives, stands therefore ready to collaborate with governments, civil society organizations, and the international community as a whole to face these challenges together and to promote culture as a lever for sustainable social and economic development. Dear participants, coming to the end of my presentation, I would like to express a number of thanks on behalf of the Secretariat of the 2005 Convention in UNESCO headquarters, in order to remember us that we have what we have seen today is the result of teamwork from different perspectives. First of all, our deepest thanks to the Republic of Korea for making this project possible. Our thanks also to the experts who accompanied us in this project, and to all individuals of the ministries and other stakeholders of the 4 partner countries who placed confidence in us and agreed to participate in the project. I would like also to extend from headquarters our warmest thanks to our colleagues from the Almaty office, Aygul and Major, who brilliantly managed the project. And last but not least, the interpreters of today's meeting, which allowed me in particular to follow and participate in the meeting. This is only working together that we will be able to achieve sustainable, inclusive, and peaceful development. So many thanks to all of you, and looking forward to continuing our collaboration. Thank you.
Thank you, Caroline.
Всем большое спасибо. На этом, наверное, наш
Thank you very much. This probably ends this event. Again, joining the words of gratitude, thanks to our tech support and our interpreters who helped us with the logistics. So we'll keep in touch with you, and you can keep an eye on things via the social media, or we will publish the information about our future work. Goodbye to everyone. Thank you.